Welcome to the Crossroads, where we honor the duality of life, embracing the darkness, and loving the light. Together we'll explore spiritual philosophy, mythology, shamanic practices, witchcraft, and more. Join me as we journey through the mysteries of life, death, and everything in between. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and not professional advice. Please use your own discretion and enjoy the show. Hi everyone, welcome to the Crossroads. My name is Angela Rajnigandha. I am the owner of Arcana Apothecary. This may be a little bit of a shorter episode. This is more maybe just a little bit of a follow-up to our last episode about embracing our darkness, or maybe just a little bit of a clarification, where I want to talk a little bit about the difference between our shadow and our darkness. These two terms often do get used interchangeably, and I even caught myself accidentally using them interchangeably in the last video. So I want to just clarify a little bit. And you guys know I'm not a public speaker and I'm not very comfortable in front of the camera, so you're likely to catch me stumble over my words a little bit here and there or misspeak quite often. Try not to hold it against me. But these two terms, our darkness and our shadow, while there is some overlap to these two terms, they do actually represent two different things. And that's what I want to talk about today. So I'm going to share a little bit how I personally define these concepts, which may differ a little bit from how other people do, but that's okay. There's no one right way to look at this kind of stuff. And it's just so much more important to read the intent behind people's words versus nitpicking on their actual words, if you know what I mean. So darkness. When I talk about our darkness, I'm talking about those very intense primal parts of us that aren't inherently bad. They just don't neatly fit into what society likes to see from us. Things like our anger, our sensuality, rebellion, destruction, those kind of things. And these are all very natural parts of being human, and when expressed in healthy ways, they're incredibly empowering. But the shadow is a little different. The shadow is what happens when we repress those darker aspects of ourselves because society or our families or religions tell us that they're bad. So we bury those parts of ourselves deep inside. What ends up in the shadow aren't just darker traits either, but our repressed light traits end up there as well. This can be our repressed joy or playfulness or power. Things that we've been taught are just too much or inappropriate. They also get buried deep down inside of us. And when these traits are repressed, they can cause harm, whether it's through shame, self-doubt, or lack of self-worth. So the shadow isn't just about repressed darkness. It's anything that we've pushed away, tried to disown, pretend doesn't exist. Anything we've been taught is bad. Now, where my thought process might differ a little bit around what others how others think about this is when I think of the shadow, I don't necessarily think of it being made up of the buried anger, the buried sexuality, or the buried playfulness. I think it's more made up of the shame or embarrassment around the anger or whatever that make up the shadow. The original emotion itself was never an issue. It's the shame or the embarrassment that is the issue. That's the part that needs to be brought to light. That's the part that needs to be healed. So, for an example, this may be like sexuality. If you were raised in a culture where sexuality was repressed, the natural energy of sexuality itself doesn't become the shadow necessarily. It's the shame around it, I think, that becomes that shadow. And when that shame remains unhealed or unchecked, that's where it can later manifest into unhealthy, maybe sexual behaviors. And the sexual energy is still there. It's just now it's tainted with the shame, the emotional baggage of that repression, I guess. Also, so say for playfulness, maybe you were raised to believe that being playful was childish or immature or stupid. So you became embarrassed and felt shame around this. So you stopped being playful. You stopped doing it. And it's not necessarily the playfulness that needs to be uncovered from the shadow and brought to light. It's the shame and the embarrassment that needs to be recognized and healed. So when doing things like shadow work, I don't think you're necessarily trying to uncover your anger or your playfulness. You're trying to uncover those emotions that caused you to repress the anger and the playfulness. It's the shame, it's the guilt, it's the embarrassment. It's those feelings that need to be addressed. The original emotions themselves, anger, playfulness, sexuality, whatever, those were never the issue. And they still aren't the issue, in my opinion. It's the guilt and the shame. Those are the issues. That's what needs to be healed. So I guess to summarize, our darker traits are just our character traits that aren't so pretty. Our anger, our destruction, things like that. Where our shadow traits are that which has been repressed. And our dark traits, when expressed in a healthy manner, they don't become our shadow traits. The shadow traits only develop through repression. And again, I don't necessarily think it's the dark trait or light trait itself that becomes shadow. I think our shadow is more built up of the shame, the embarrassment, the guilt, that kind of thing. And I think I'll do another video later on about shadow work specifically. I just wanted to make a little bit of a clarification, and I hope I did that. I think the way I think about shadow work is maybe a little bit different than some. Some feel any emotions that you're repressing become the shadow. So your shadow is repressed anger, repressed sadness, repressed whatever. But that maybe just not be how I see it, because I don't think it's the actual emotion itself that lies there. I think it's the shame around it. It's become tainted and shifted by the shame. So I don't think it's just healthy anger sitting there in the shadow. I think it's kind of transforms to a different thing, this other form of just shameful emotion. I think that's what needs to be uncovered. We need to uncover why we're repressing these things, and I think that's how I would approach shadow work anyway. But we'll talk about that another day. So until then, thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Thank you for joining me at The Crossroads, which is brought to you by Arcana Apothecary. Visit me at arcanaapothecary.com and connect on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can continue this journey together. Remember, there's a time for love and light, and there's a time for raising hell. Until next time, I'll meet you at The Crossroads.